Greetings. You're welcome to yet another very important segment on the JMA connections. And this discussion is devoted to the situation ongoing in Cameroon right now following the post-election violence and the confusion that is ongoing in the country. And we will also make mention of some few hotspots across Africa, but especially I'll be relating this to what is going on in the southern Cameroons and how what is happening in La République du Cameroon right now and some other francophone African countries should inform the people of the southern Cameroons involved in liberation efforts for our territory to proceed after what we are all seeing at this point in time. So if you're just joining, of course you're onto the JMA connections, and today is Wednesday. Today is the 29th day of October, and the year is 2025. My dear people, people of Southern Cameroons, people of Amazonia, friends and lovers of freedom, and our neighbors of La République du Cameroon. I am so saddened by what I am seeing going on in La République du Cameroon. Especially saddened because anyone who has observed the political scene in this country should have understood that this is how everything would definitely end. At this point today, which is the Wednesday the 28th of October, the situation on the ground in La République du Cameroon indicates that the citizens are already showing signs of fatigue. Fatigue with standing up for their rights. Fatigue with standing up for what belongs to them. Fatigue for standing up for their future. Future that's being confiscated by a handful of individuals, some 2,000 to some 2 to 3,000 individuals calling themselves elite across the country. Right now, a lot of people have turned their attention to what the international community is doing or saying regarding the situation on the ground. And from all indications, a lot of people believe that the international community's condemnation of the acts that the military and forces of maintenance of law and order, or the forces of law and order in La République du Cameroon are doing, that condemnation could bring some degree of restraint. But if you go by what has happened in Cameroon before, you know that on no account, since he came to power in 1982 and committed exactions beginning from 1984 with a failed coup attempt right up to this day, Paul Biya has never ever been held to account. Paul Biya, even as we speak, is overseeing a genocide in the former UN Trust territory of British Southern Cameroons. Nobody, no one anywhere has held Paul Biya and his system to account. Paul Biya has practiced the scorched earth policy on the people of the Southern Cameroons. His soldiers have burned down over 400 village settlements, burnt human beings alive, raped, tortured, maimed, looted. Nothing has happened. Each time any other friend, international friend of freedom, said this matter should be discussed, the French dangled a veto. Each time there were any attempts to have this situation discussed, the French came in defense, claiming that Paul Biya was doing his utmost best, but the people were making life difficult for him, and whatever they were getting as exactions were a response to provocation. Even the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, was also caught in this way. As I walked into the studio, I was looking at statements issued here and there, and people were like, oh my goodness, there's a loud wave of condemnation coming in and all of those things, and so with that, those waves of condemnation and calls to accountability for what is going on, for the high-handed approach of the Cameroon forces of law and order, something is going to change. But folks, before I get into that, Let's focus first on what I raised in my last discussion. In my last discussion on this platform, I said France, that is the architect of what is unraveling in Cameroon right now and what is going on in Cote d'Ivoire at this moment, will play the ostrich, would play the fox game, hang behind, play around, make claims, and push its satellite countries and organizations to come there screaming and shouting congratulations, so that the French will come at the end of the day as though they were constrained. I pointed that out. At the time I was talking, Oligui Nguema, yeah, that is the president of Gabon, had sent a letter of congratulation. This one too flew in very fast from Teodoro Obiangema Mbadzogo. Teodoro Obiangema Mbadzogo is also one of the oldest or one of the longest serving presidents on the African continent. Teodoro Obiangema Mbadzogo, I mean, in his letter of congratulations, is very loud, very, very loud. And this is to be expected. Shortly after Teodoro Obiangema Mbadzogo came in as expected, of course, from the CEMAC zone, we also had one already coming in from Chad, from the president of Chad, Idriss Déby Itno. Although the letter of congratulation by the president of Chad has met with a lot of condemnation from the civil society in Chad and the ordinary person on the street, that doesn't stop the fact that this is the charade that was expected. And you thought that it could end around some of those nations. No. When I talked about France having sway not only on the French-speaking African countries, but also on some regional organizations, I might have omitted to talk about the OAU, about the AU, the organization of, or rather the African Union. I get mixed up sometimes because it was first of all the Organization of African Unity before becoming the African Union. Now, if you have paid keen attention to the happenings within the African Union, you will understand that even the African Union as a body is a tool in the hands of the Western powers. But the Western power that uses the African Union more than every other Western power is still France. And France has intervened a lot of the time, playing all its diplomacy the way it can to ensure that citizens from French-speaking African countries continue to hold the top offices for obvious reasons. You would notice that after Ms. Zuma, the next chairman of the African Union Commission was Moussa Faki of Chad. And everyone will recall what former South African President Thabo Mbeki talked about Moussa Faki and the mission that he was dispatched to go carry out in Cameroon regarding the situation in the southern Cameroons. We all recall the role that Moussa Faki played in protecting French Cameroon, the actions of Mr. Paul Biya each time he was called at the UN Security Council, especially when the United Nations or the United States of America forced the UN Security Council to hold a Sharia session on the situation in the an area session on the situation in the southern Cameroon. That session, which could not result to a resolution of the UN Security Council, I mean the area session. I might have mixed up when I said Sharia because I mean sometimes you get emotional, you get really frustrated with the way some of these things are happening. That some of those words could even sound the same. But what I'm saying is the session of the of the UN Security Council that was held on the situation in the southern Cameroons, but that would end without a resolution because it just needed to have it, discussed. And this was at the behest of the United Nations. Why would it go only through the Ariel formula? Because France would threaten to dangle its veto power if you have to get to the point where you will punish La République du Cameroon. For that reason, Moussa Faki who was expected to bring a veritas report, a true picture of the situation on the ground, because of the proximity of the offices of the AU on the ground, came away from there with basically whitewashing what the Biya regime has been doing, and rather talking about so-called sessions for dialogue, all kinds of tactics that they knew were not meant at resolving a problem, but simply staging that something is happening. With this, you would expect that obviously nothing would happen. So when Musa Faki came to the end of his tenure, France pulled its strings to ensure that the next chairman of the African Union Commission would still be from a French-speaking country. And this time, it was this gentleman from Djibouti, the one you find on my screen. This gentleman from Djibouti, Mahmoud Yusuf, who was the foreign minister of Djibouti, is the new chairman of the African Union Commission. While everybody is crying foul, while it is awash in every circle that the election in Cameroon was a charade, that the level of rigging was unimaginable, and every reasonable being pointing out that this did not have anything to do with what you would call a democratic exercise, the African Union hurried, of course, at the push of France to come up with a statement. And when you look at this statement from the African Union, it is obvious that, as a matter of fact, the focus was on saying Mr. Paul Biya has been declared winner. He already has it. The Constitutional Council has passed the verdict. Although there are a few things that are not going on right, or that didn't turn out very well, but by and large, we think what is more important now is peace. Let there be dialogue. This is the approach that has been adopted each time that this kind of thing happens. And Paul Biya is aware of this. That is why at this moment I'm talking, from diplomatic cables I've heard, all the pressure is being brought to bear now, not on Paul Biya, not on the Biya regime, not on Yaoundé to respect the will of the people, but on Issa Chiruma to enter into a dialogue with Paul Biya. This is what is happening as we speak. All the pressure that's being brought to bear is on Issa Chiruma. Please let there be peace. We want peace. We don't want the Central African sub-region to join the other regions in total instability. Let there be peace in that region. Get in touch with your brother. You people talk this out together. That approach means they're telling Issa Chiruma, get into a power-sharing agreement with Paul Biya and let's end this thing and wait for the next 7 years. After all, one of the ministers delegate the minister delegate at the Ministry of Justice in Cameroon, Jean de Dieu Momo, says 7 years are just so short. Before you know it, 7 years will be over. So there is no point, don't cry. Let's just let it go because they have taken it. So this approach is what Yaoundé always expects. They know we will take it. We will take it by force. And at the end of the day, they will force them to bow to us. France clearly is playing behind the scenes, but giving the impression that they are concerned about what is going on. They have called on their citizens, a lot of them, to leave the territory if they can. Despite all these screams and all these shouts, we know what is going on the ground. So while you are still battling, but what is going on? The United Nations issues this statement. And according to this statement from the United Nations, you see clearly that the Secretary General, much as he's condemning what is going on the ground, the Secretary General of the United Nations is not about to tell Paul Biya, no, it's not about to tell Paul Biya that, no, you have to stop this, you have to respect the wills of the people. But this is what he says. The Secretary General has taken note of the announcement of results of the presidential election held in Cameroon on October 12th. That statement in itself, that statement alone is already an indication. It's already an indication that the United Nations is accepting the results as pronounced by the Constitutional Council. But when he says he is deeply concerned by post-electoral violence and by reports of excessive use of force, he deplores the loss of life and injuries among both protesters and security forces and extends his condolences to the families of the victims. He calls for a thorough and impartial investigation into these incidents. So the Secretary General urges all political stakeholders and their supporters to exercise restraint, reject violence, and refrain from any inflammatory rhetoric and hate speech. He stresses the critical importance of safeguarding human rights and fundamental freedom. He calls on authorities to ensure a safe and a secure environment where the rights of all citizens are protected and to ensure due process for anyone arrested. The Secretary General encourages inclusive dialogue to address grievances and preserve national unity and stability and resolve any dispute through legal and peaceful means. There, Antonio Guterres lands. This is exactly what you know. This is exactly what you understand that the United Nations would do. This is exactly what the Biya system expected the United Nations to do. This is exactly what the French would engineer and work with the United Nations Secretary General to do. Because the objective at the end of the day is, let there be peace. What kind of peace are you talking about here? Peace that is secured through the barrel of the gun? Peace that is imposed on a people? Peace that comes as a result of the suppression of thoughts, the suppression of free expression? Peace that is got by the slaughter of civilians simply asking for their future to be safeguarded? Peace by clamping down on people who are worried that their destinies are being stolen from them? But of course, then when you look back, you say, this Antonio Guterres, he has been to Yaoundé, I think a couple of times. And how did it end? Oh, like this. Yes, this is how it ended. This is how Antonio Guterres' trips to Yaoundé on 2 occasions have ended. And so, when Antonio Guterres grabs this in this kind of fashion, you expect Antonio Guterres to tell Paul Biya, to tell these people that no, you have to respect the will of the people. I had mentioned here before that this same Secretary General, Antonio Guterres of the United Nations, had told Mr. Joseph John Gute and Professor Nkot, along with Elvis Ngolengole, who visited New York to talk about the situation in the southern Cameroons, that he was aware that usually when situations come like this, the people come out, provoke, so that when they clamp out on them in efforts to restore peace, they will end up killing, and then they will start screaming human rights violation, and promise to use his good offices to do public relations for the government of Cameroon. So it is not from this same man that you will expect that something good can come out, that you will expect impartiality, that you will expect a greater view into exactly what is happening in La République du Cameroon. This is why I have tried several times to draw the attention of the people of the Republic of Cameroon to the effect that if you are not aware, your destiny is in your own hands. If you are not aware, a system like the Biya system can never be brought down through the ballot box. There were daydreamers throughout this process. I followed a lot of, personalities that I respected, show a lot of optimism, feel excited about the election. But if they didn't think option B, then you note that all of those efforts were meant to fail. If all those who are screaming right now, we will not let this happen, really hope that they are not going to let it happen, then they should be thinking of something else other than just seeing the rampant actions that we are witnessing on the streets of some of the cities in Cameroon. Today, Garoua is hot. Tomorrow it is cold. Douala takes over. The next day, Douala is cold. Bafoussam comes in. The next day, it is Betua that takes over. Nothing is synchronized. Nothing is organized. And thus far, apparently, people are looking up to Issa Chiruma Bakari, who is literally under a kind of house arrest, to be the one to come out on each day to give guidelines. I guess the gentleman is doing more than enough, coming out already on a daily basis, literally to communicate, to say I am determined, to say I will fight all the way, to say we have to stand very strong, to say I will not give up, to say I will do all I can to liberate the country by all means. But he can't do this by himself. And if you want to know, that international support that you appear to be hoping for, I'm not sure it's in the offing. If you want to learn something, let's listen very briefly to the French Minister of Cooperation talk about the situation in La République du Cameroun.
Ce matin face à Arnaud Pontus, la ministre française déléguée chargée de la francophonie, des partenariats internationaux et des Français de l'étranger, Éléonore Carrois.
Bonjour Madame la ministre.
Bonjour.
Soyez la bienvenue sur RFI. Le président sortant du Cameroun, Paul Biya, déclaré réélu pour un 8e mandat. C'est ce qu'a annoncé hier le Conseil constitutionnel du pays. Il est crédité de 53,66% des voix. Et cette annonce n'a été suivie d'aucune réaction officielle de la France, aucun message de félicitations posté par l'Élysée. Que se passe-t-il, Éléonore Carrois?
Nous restons attentifs à la situation. Nous avons, comme vous, observé les différents événements qui se sont déroulés. Nous sommes très attachés aux élections démocratiques, inclusives, à ce que la société civile soit écoutée. Donc nous attendons de voir ce qui va se passer, l'évolution de la situation.
Est-ce que là...
If you listen well to this woman, she's from the office of the Francophonie, that is under the ministries of cooperation in France, but this one's directed towards the Francophonie, the French organization promoting French culture across the world. Now, when you hear her talk, she says clearly, answering to the question as to why France has not extended a message of congratulations to Paul Biya at this point in time. And she says, we are waiting. And she pushes further. She says, France, we are really concerned about the actions and the feelings of the civil society. We want to be in tune with, democratic values, and we want to be certain that the considerations, the worries, and the concerns and fears of the civil society are taken into account. And so we are still observing the situation. Now you ask yourself, why should France still be observing the situation? They're either condemning what everyone knows to be a charade of an election, or they are congratulating at once. But they are observing because they need to take time. They need to come right from behind. They need to come across as people who were reluctant, very reluctant to congratulate Paul Biya because they were not happy with what happened. But at the core, we know that they are the ones who are behind the scenes, pushing everything that we are seeing right up to this point. The journalist pushes a bit further, and I'd like us to listen one more page.
La France est embarrassée par l'annonce de cette réélection de Paul Biya.
Non, je ne dirais pas cela. Nous ne faisons pas d'ingérence dans la politique nationale des différents États africains, mais en revanche, nous sommes très déroulés. Nous sommes très attachés aux élections démocratiques, inclusives, à ce que la société civile soit écoutée. Donc nous attendons de voir ce qui va se passer, l'évolution de la situation.
Est-ce que la France est embarrassée par l'annonce de cette réélection de Paul Biya?
Non, je ne dirais pas cela. Nous ne faisons pas d'ingérence dans la politique nationale des différents États africains, mais en revanche, nous sommes très attentifs à ce que les processus se déroulent de manière ordonnée, démocratique surtout. Donc nous suivrons la situation de très près. Puis moi, en tant que ministre des Français de l'étranger, je serai aussi très attentive à la sécurité de nos compatriotes partout où ils sont.
Bien évidemment.
So you hear this? The journalist is inquisitive. He asks further, is France embarrassed? That's a very important question. Very important because it is at the center of everything that is happening. Because the French themselves know that this is not only humiliating an entire country. This is not only spraying should I say, dust in the eyes of over 38 million people. This is not only stealing the destiny of a whole generation, but it is a travesty of even what humanity would imagine to be a system of governance. At 93 years, someone is taking a new 7-year mandate. But she says France is not, they will not say France is embarrassed. She will simply say France does not want to interfere in the internal affairs of sovereign countries. Like, seriously. This same France, we saw them with helicopter gunships interfere in Cote d'Ivoire. I had talked about that before. We saw this same France ready to send troops to Niger to go and reinstate President Bazoum. We have seen this same France come into Chad with troops to help install the young Idriss Déby. And so, when France tells us that they don't like to interfere in the internal affairs of sovereign countries, you ask yourself if you got them well or you just didn't hear properly. But she ends up telling you the interest of France right now with the situation in Cameroon is ensuring the security and safety of their citizens. That is what matters at this point in time. Kill yourselves. Do whatever you want to do to yourselves. Protect our interests, but let nothing happen to any of our citizens. But while all this is going on, people are there thinking, maybe if we come out on the streets 2, 3, 4, 5 days, the international community will say something. This same international community in 1992 took note of the fact that Paul Biya lost the elections. We listened to Harriet Ekwe on this platform say very clearly that the US ambassador at the time, Francis Cook, told them that yes, we know that Frundi has won the elections, but France does not want to see Frundi as president. This is the same France that is telling us that they don't like to interfere in the internal affairs of sovereign countries. Harriet Ekwe was clear, and that Francis Cook said the United States wanted at all costs, they put pressure on Frundi to accept to even be vice president because he should get somewhere close to power and be able to have access to some key state files. That never came to pass. And election cycle after election cycle, Paul Biya has pushed himself in whatever way. In 2018, Maurice Kamto was dumped in jail. There was so much noise. It took France, that does not interfere in the internal affairs of foreign countries, for Maurice Kamto to be released from jail after some 8 good months in Kondengi. This is exactly what we are talking about. And I suppose that by this message from Rebecca Enonchon, who is a member of the platform they call the Project C, it gives me the impression that they are understanding exactly what is going on. But just understanding, would that be enough? This is what she says. On vous voit déjà venir. Transition sous Biya président? No. Oh yes, of course, we can see you come. So, are you trying to talk to us about that? You want a situation where we now resort that for the sake of peace, let there be a transitional government led by Paul Biya. And it says, on nous promettra un gouvernement d'union, un nouveau code électoral, de belles réformes pour nous calmer, pendant qu'il prépare en coulisses un gré à gré pour imposer encore un dirigeant qu'on n'a pas choisi. On va repartir pour 50 ans de dictature. On ne tombera pas dans le piège. Respectez le choix des Camerounais. L'élection n'était pas une suggestion. This is a good statement, Rebecca. But this statement, like you say, that there's going to be the promise of a transitional government. There's going to be a promise of a government of national unity through power sharing. There's going to be the promise of, okay, let's make sure they will put in place a new electoral code. Of course, Biya has brought in electoral codes upon electoral codes that are always tailored to allow him see his will prevail. We can recall Onel 1. That's how did they call the National Elections Observatory? Onel 1, Onel 2, and the Elekam. Nothing is changing. And she says, with all of this, you're going to end up with a situation where the French will finally get away like they've done in Gabon, get away like they did in Togo with 4 Nyasimbe taking over from his father Nyasimbe Eyadema. They will do the same thing like they have done in Chad with Idris Deby Idno's son Muhammad Deby taking over from him. And at the end of the day, the same system will be in place. The very same system will be in place for yet another 50 years. Although Rebecca screams, we are not going to fall in that trap anymore. You beg the question as to what is in the offing. My expectation at this point would be that you will find some group come up, that they are the coordinating unit or the organizing unit that is helping canalize or that is helping direct, guide the ongoing demonstrations in the streets, whether they're peaceful or or sometimes when people get really provoked, they get off rails. They need to be guided. They need to be sensitized. They need to be educated. They need to be told what to do and what not to do, and how to do things, and how to handle provocation from trigger-happy men and women in uniform. At this point, you notice that on social media is cacophony. Soon, you find a message jumping from east to say Douala will be under ghost town right up to the 28th of November. You find another one flying from this end. Bafoussam will be under ghost town for the next 2 weeks. But Bafoussam reportedly started returning to normalcy this day. You will find another one coming out better. Oh no, all over the national territory, no cars should move. There should be some unit that is coordinating these actions. Just flying the way it is flying, it gives Yaoundé the opportunity to instill fear, the opportunity to crack down, the opportunity to divide, the opportunity to tribalize as they are already doing, make it look like it's some kind of ethnic confrontation, and at the end of the day, break the whole system, and within 2 weeks, the noise is over. And the situation of the people will get worse than it was before. Because if they survive this one, people should not think that their situations will improve. No, the situation is going to get worse because they will get further emboldened by the notion of total invincibility. That's exactly what is in their heads. In their heads, they tell themselves, for 43 years, we have done it. Nothing has stopped us. Nothing will stop us this time. And if they are not stopped this time, they know that for the next 50 years, they will do it again and nothing will stop them. Do you want to hang on foreign help, on foreign interference, or on foreign assistance? Listen to Issa Chiruma Bakari on that subject matter.
We have called on the international community to bear witness. We have called our neighboring country to bear witness. Subliminally, they all respond that no one will come and do your work for you. Therefore, it is up to each of us to search deep within ourselves to unleash our inner strength, courage, and sense of purpose. After all, as the saying goes, there is no dignity in expecting others to do everything for you.
Strong words there from Issa Chiruma Bakari. But can he count on the people who appear not to understand the meaning of resistance? Can he count on the people who only on day 2 of their demonstrations already rather took to looting, to breaking into people's shops, carrying food, carrying all kinds of things, breaking into banks and stealing? Can he count on the people who have a history of being totally uncoordinated and who, after resisting for a few days, feel that the thing to do very, very quickly is to jump into nearby bars, drink alcohol, get drunk, and ask themselves, what can we do? Can he count on them? Rebecca Enonchon comes back and appears to give a response to that question. But I wonder just how how far this goes.
Négociation pour avoir des meilleures conditions et pour chasser ce régime. Et donc, on a gagné. On a pu chasser ce régime par les urnes. On a pris notre décision et on va prendre nos responsabilités. Donc, toutes ces tentatives d'intimidation ne font que radicaliser la population. Et vous ne pouvez pas mettre le feu et puis appeler à la paix, parce que la paix, elle ne s'impose pas. En fait, quand on allait aux élections, c'était pas un outil de négociation pour avoir des meilleures conditions. Négociation pour avoir des meilleures conditions et pour chasser ce régime.
So, you went to the elections, as she's saying, that this election was not meant to go to see if you can negotiate, just have some kind of negotiations for better conditions. That the regime has been chased away through the ballot box and they just have to go away. And so it's not a matter of coming to sit down to say, let's address this or let's address that. The question you ask here, are they hoping to do this only with a handful of people? Or are they hoping, or are they thinking about a strategy that will lead to mass protests, the likes of which we saw only in Madagascar in the past few days? Within the people themselves that came out massively to vote against Paul Biya, the anger is real, which is fuel enough that can be mobilized to make the resistance against Biya and his gang very strong. But is there anyone ready to tap this resource? Just listen to these folks.
Je ne veux pas l'argent. L'argent, c'est quoi? L'argent, c'est le changement. Ce n'est pas le changement. Nous voulons seulement, c'est-à-dire que nous voulons le changement. Moi, je sors du champ. J'ai fait l'accident. Je ne connaissais pas qu'il y avait un mouvement ici, là. Bon, maintenant, là, nous voulons le changement. Pourquoi? Parce que nos enfants ont les diplômes. Nos enfants ne travaillent pas. Ils sont là. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on doit faire? Nous ne voulons plus ça. Nous ne voulons plus ça. Nous voulons le changement. Qui libère, qui part.
Nous sommes ici, nous sommes d'actifs ici. Nous souffrons tellement. Nous savons que s'il y a quelque chose qui nuit notre département, tous les biens sortent dans le département du CAM. Et quand le département était, le CAM était le premier département dans le littoral, je le répète toujours. Et si aujourd'hui nous vivons comme des animaux, nous sommes devenus les derniers départements de ce pays. Et ce n'est pas bon. Nos enfants souffrent. Vous voyez la colline de Batika. Regardez, pour arriver ici, les enfants, il y avait soit un meeting là-bas hier. Les gens souffraient pour rentrer ici. Ça, Banya, c'est le centre commercial de Yabassi. Et quand le centre commercial de Yabassi est comme ça, comment nous faire? Nous allons faire comment? Les étrangers viennent ici, on nous injure. Les pauvres Yabassiens, vous savez quoi? Tous les biens viennent dans l'ONCAM. Le bois, la nourriture viennent dans l'ONCAM. Et nous n'avons pas de route. Une route qu'on a commencé depuis 3, 4, 5 ans. On n'arrive pas. Quand vous venez là, vous allez trouver la route là comment? Moi, je m'inquiète beaucoup. Parce que je suis née ici, je me suis mariée ici. Et je vieillis ici là. Nous vivons très mal dans notre département.
Je ne veux pas l'argent.
So you see these two women talking about the situation that they are undergoing in just their local government area. They tell you all we want real change. We don't want money. We don't want anything from anybody. We want change. They are explaining that they were coming from the bushes from a harvest. They did not even know that there were any movements, strikes and all of those things. But they just met them and they think it makes a lot of sense to stand up for what you believe in. They are talking about the pains, the challenges, the difficulties. From their community, a lot of timber is harvested. From their community, a lot of resources are tapped. Yet, they have no development. Yet, they have no roads. Yet, they suffer and die from road accidents on a daily basis. Yet, their children do not have jobs. This kind of anger, this kind of frustration is fertile ground for those who normally have a clear sense of focus to get the people better organized to stand up for what they believe in. If you take a look at this crowd that happened in Mora, you look at the number of men and women in uniform present there, you understand that if you have this kind of crowds all over the country on a daily basis, this is something that would send Yaoundé thinking. Take a watch.
Nous sommes en direct des victoires, là où la situation se passe, il y a braquage. La police, la population tout entière et l'armée même est sur place pour arrêter les criminels. Nous procéder aussi à être direct, mais il y a la connexion bête, il n'y a pas moyen de faire direct. Vous pouvez constater, il y a des chansons en cadre de soutien pour la.
So you see for yourself that faced with this kind of crowd, the military will find it difficult to go that brutal, to go that nuclear, to go that ballistic, because they can easily be overwhelmed. They know the dangers that they too face. And in this kind of circumstance, they may not pay attention to ethics, but they will think about what can happen to them if suddenly the people decide to swarm over them. And so, if you will find crowds of 20, 30, 40 people go out there, and before long, another community comes out with machetes and says, no, this is our area, we don't want people to cause disorder here. If you cause disorder, we will come after you. That is exactly how Biya has managed to lord it over the people of this country for 43 years and counting. So, that's why I laugh. I quip when some people point to the calls from the United Nations for serious investigations into who gave instructions that they should open fire, that they should fire live ammunition on protesters. I say you definitely don't have an idea. You look at what is happening right now. The most deadly forces are being channeled into the economic capital of Cameroon, Douala. So this is the civil society that France respects. This is the action of the civil society that France is waiting to see. So folks, if the people of Cameroon really want change, they should understand you will never come through the ballot box. If the people of Cameroon really want change, they should begin asking themselves, what do we need to do? How do we go about this? What assets do we have? Who do we need to touch? And how should we get coordinated? If they're sitting back and just thinking that perhaps Issa Chiruma Bakari of his own volition, all by himself, is going to produce a magic one, then Issa Chiruma Bakari may as well end up where Paul Atanganji promised in what he described in French as pays de si je savais, for a very long time to come. Because those soldiers who are going out there, yes, they know ethics, but don't forget that ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. But these people, they have a good grasp of this. We saw a military spokesperson in Cameroon talked about the fact that when you get out on the field, you have a right to decide to take an instruction which is illegal or deny it. But the action that you take will engage your personal responsibility. That takes us back, therefore, to this notion of ethics, which is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. So those that are shooting, are they shooting because they think that, or they know that they have a right to shoot, or they think it is the right thing to do? The future that is being fought for, is it the future of some people, excluding they themselves and even their own children? The question is a serious one, and the answer to it is certainly blowing in the wind. My dear people, This is where we'll end our broadcast today. When we come back here, we'll be looking at something known as the theory of the elite. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. The theory of the elite will give you the proper lens to understand how Paul Biya has been able to hold every single community in Cameroon hostage for 43 years and could still be able to do that for many more years to come. Thank you very much for your very kind attention. If you enjoyed this show, share the link and of course make sure to subscribe so you stay abreast. Thank you.